Welcome back, guys. So let's do another theater run roundup. And this week I watched 4 movies in the theater. But not really. I just watched 3, and then I watched The Irishman, which is on Netflix. Don't tell anybody. But I watched 4 movies in the theater. So let's get started with my first movie that I watched, which is The Irishman, Martin Scorsese's newest picture. That was released to some theaters, but not released to my theaters in town. So I had to watch this on Netflix, which I thought was kind of a disservice to the movie. But it's not like I watched it on like a Game Boy Advance, like they were putting on pictures online of like that, which was pretty hilarious. But The Irishman, Martin Scorsese, I do really love as a director. I am ashamed to say I haven't seen all of his work. I've seen a lot of his big ones, but I have not seen all of Scorsese's work. And I really love the movies that I've seen him direct. And this one is no exception. I think this is a great movie. It truly is a fantastically interesting movie for 3.5 hours. I was genuinely surprised I was that interested throughout, but of course it's a Scorsese movie. I'm interested in mob movies with him because that's not something that I always love, like watching mob movies, but ones that are done really well, and Scorsese is one of the masters of mob movies. He does great here, and it's the basic story is about a mob boss who like might have it being involved with the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa or the implied killing of Jimmy Hoffa. So I think that's really fascinating at first, and I think that the thing that this movie really did for me is performances. Performances, again, are key. It's awesome seeing Joe Pesci in here again. It's great seeing Al Pacino and De Niro again in this type of movie. It's great seeing them back because I haven't seen them do this for a while. And I really, really loved all their performances. All their performances were very, very well done. And it felt like something like old school Scorsese, which I thought was awesome. Really not much else to say about The Irishman. Just a fantastically made movie. Loved everything about it. Then I went and saw A Wonderful Day in the Neighborhood, which is the Tom Hanks Mr. Rogers movie that is marketed like a Mr. Rogers movie, but it's not really a Mr. Rogers movie because it's about Lloyd, this magazine writer who has to do an article on Mr. Rogers. So it's not fully about the Mr. Rogers, and the trailers make it feel like that is truly the case, and it's not, which is interesting because this movie, I'm not dogging the movie on this because how do you market a movie that's got Mr. Rogers in it for some parts of the movie, but then how do you market it with not showing him, because this movie wouldn't have done as well if it wasn't marketed that way. So it's interesting. It's a very deceiving kind of marketing tactic, but I mean, I don't blame them. How do you get this movie to work for people to go and see it? Because it really is key watching trailers for a movie and get hyped up. And this one, because it had Mr. Rogers and because Tom Hanks, the person everybody loves is Mr. Rogers, which I think is great casting. It of course is doing, I think, fine. I haven't even looked at how the movie is doing theatrically, but I bet it's doing pretty well for like Tom Hanks being involved and for them showing off the Mr. Rogers stuff in the trailer. So this one to me was really good, but it was a really weird one. Like it's very strange with like the movie is kind of like so it's about this character Lloyd who has all these problems like in his life at the moment, and he has these problems while he interviews Mr. Rogers, but Mr. Rogers is like the person telling the story like an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which is very wacky and interesting, and like it's really weird. And like there are scenes where like Lloyd, the character, will kind of freak out and like have like an hallucination about Mr. Rogers, and it's really wacky and really weird, and it's just a very odd movie in tone like that, because it's trying to be like a Mr. Rogers episode, but a movie within the episode. It's really odd, and it's one I feel like people should see. I'm not dogging the movie. I think the movie was well done, but it's just an interesting tactic that they did on that standpoint. Like, this is a very interestingly done movie. It's just not something I expected them to do this way. It's a very odd movie, but I did enjoy it overall. Then I went and saw The Playmobil movie. The Playmobil movie. Get that through your head. The Playmobil movie. I went and saw that. This was an absolute piece of shit. And watching this movie, it pissed me off because it is obviously trying to obviously trying to go on the Lego movie that was made 5 years ago, and they have like 3 or 4 sequels to the Lego movie, or in that universe. So the Lego movie has been done already like 4 times, and they put out the Playmobil movie, which it is bombing. Like, I looked up, I went to go see this in the theater, ashamedly so. I went and saw this in the theater, just to review it, and there was nobody else in the theater. It was just me at a 6:00 showing at night, seeing the Playmobil movie. It is, I'm glad it's bombing. I'm actually glad, because again, it is just one of the most blatantly like done things where it's like, oh, we had the Lego movie, let's do the Lego ripoff equivalent in real life, the Playmobils, and put them into this movie, where this movie is just incredibly forgettable. Honestly, I watched this 2 days ago in the theater, and I remember almost nothing about it. Like the basic plot, from what I remember, is that it starts in live action, where it's Anya Taylor-Joy and Gabriel Bateman. Anya Taylor-Joy was in The Witch, which is fantastic, and Gabriel Bateman was in the Child's Play remake. He's great in that, but neither of them are good here, really, because they're doing these bland, generic lines to this bland, generic movie. The movie, every single thing about this movie was utterly forgettable. I watched this movie, but I had kind of an epiphany where I was watching this movie and thinking, wow, this is one of the first times I've seen a movie in the theater where I am literally watching the screen, but am absorbing nothing. I'm absorbing nothing from this movie. It was absolutely and utterly forgettable. Everything about it was awful, and like, the only thing I will give this is, even though the actors all have crappy lines, I think they're fine. Like I said, like, they're fine. And I think I said before that they're not good, like, but I think they are fine now that I take that back. I feel like all these actors are fine in the role for this shitty ass writing that they made, but this movie was just so utterly forgettable. They even try doing all the things that were done in the Lego movie, like the characters go into a western area where, like the Lego movie, they go into a citywide area where they're driving cars around, like the Lego movie. And it's just one of the most blatant pieces of crap, like, this year. This is the worst movie I've seen so far this year. I've seen almost 60 movies this year from 2019, and this is the worst for me personally. I really hated this movie. Couldn't find anything really to say about it besides the actors are fine in it, but they're not given anything good at all. And there's no real jokes in it. The jokes in the movie are like, I'm trying to think of one. Oh, there was one character where they'd say, like, oh, it's like a stress ball. And then another character would say, I had a stress ball once. It didn't work. And that's the joke. It's jokes like that. Or Daniel Radcliffe's character, like Rex Dasher, I think is what his name is. He says his name, and then it will do that Rex Dasher, like, sound, like whenever, like, somebody says their name in a movie and, like, it says, like, a fast-paced version of their name in the background. They do that, but then they do it like 20 times with his name. Every time his name is mentioned, like, he says, I'm Rex Dasher, it'll say Rex Dasher. It's so bad. So bad. Least favorite movie of the year right there. Then the last movie we come to is Ford v Ferrari, which is the newest James Mangold movie, which I really, really liked a lot. This was really great. Overall, like, this movie, in terms of the filmmaking alone, this is fantastic in how it was done. I really love the main performances of Matt Damon and Christian Bale. They are really, really well done. And it is one of those movies where it's not, the subject matter is something I don't really care for. Like, I'm not really into cars much, but I was fascinated and interested throughout the movie with with what they did. They really did a good job of making this movie interesting for a person who doesn't really care that much about cars. Like, I know basics, but I don't like go into cars or really care that much about them. But this movie is fascinating just with the performances, with the writing. This movie is very well written. This is a beautiful movie. It is really on. In terms of a filmmaking standpoint, this is one of the best movies of the year. It's fantastic. It's edited fantastically. The performances are fantastic. The writing's fantastic. Again, the editing, whenever like you have the racing scenes, are really well done and really, really easy to follow. Like, there's no bad cuts, and it's so thrilling. Like, whenever you got these scenes of the races, and again, these characters are just so well written, so well acted. The movie just looks beautiful, edited very well. Really don't have much else to say about it. It's just a really fantastic movie, especially with the two leads. They do great, and I really love everything about it. Not my favorite movie of the year, but it is very high up there. I really did like Ford v Ferrari. And that is my theater run roundup for this week. Just 4 movies this time. Next week, I know we have Jumanji coming out, and we got the Black Christmas remake coming out. So I'll definitely review those. But as of today, that's it for this video. Tell me down below what you guys think of these movies, and thank you guys so much for watching.